Principal Matters Podcast, episode 467. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And man, this week I get to be on with my friend Daniel Bauer as we talk about being a ruckus maker. Daniel Bauer is a return guest to our show. He's the founder of Better Leaders, Better Schools and host of the top-ranked podcast for school leaders, where he inspires thousands of school leaders around the world. A former teacher and principal, he now coaches education leaders to challenge the status quo, take bold action, and build school cultures that put people first. And through his masterminds, his books, his speaking engagements, his coaching, he equips leaders with the tools to create lasting impact. His mission is to help leaders level up so they can lead with purpose, authenticity, and results. And you can learn more about him at betterleadersbetterschools.com. We'll put that link in the show notes. Danny, welcome back to Principal Matters Podcast. Feel free to fill in the gaps in that intro and tell listeners anything else they may be surprised to know about you.
Yeah, thanks, Will. It's always an honor to spend some time with you, right? And to share the mic in this case, put a message out that I hope leaders find encouraging. Catching you up wise, these days I like to say that I love to help ruckus makers reimagine education within traditional settings so they create a campus experience worth showing up for. Mm-hmm. And you were just on my show as well, and I don't know. We didn't talk about production, so I don't know when that one releases and this one does.
Yeah.
But if somebody's listening to this, they'll probably like Better Leaders, Better Schools too, and they'll love your episode, obviously. And I think he actually touched on a number of those ideas about reimagining, because we were talking about your book. Your book's great, right? Whose permission are you waiting for? I think that's kind of the essence, right, of a ruckus maker. When you want to do school different, you're choosing yourself. You're picking yourself first. I like to say that the best bet you can make, right, is a bet on yourself. And so, yeah, I think that's good for now.
Yeah. Well, let's sit here for a little bit longer on that term ruckus makers, because sometimes if someone doesn't know you and they come across that content, they'll be like, what's he trying to do here? I thought we were trying to create these safe and, predictable learning environments, Danny. So talk about what you're not saying through that concept, but then talk about what you really want people to take away from owning that idea of being a ruckus maker.
Safe and predictable, that's my friend Mitch, right? With his work with executive functions. And he wrote a great book, Executive Functions for Every Classroom. And that book's about creating these safe, predictable learning routines, which you said you do want, right? Absolutely, 100%. I just know who I was created to be. And Danny is a kind of guy that just, is walking around to the beat of a different drummer. Last night I was in a mastermind about storytelling, and I was talking to my friend Heather, but as we got into it, I was just saying how I do so many things just to entertain myself, right? And that kind of thing. And we were also talking about I had this opportunity to do the Summer Institute, the keynote for all the principals in Massachusetts. So what an honor that's going to be. And I was explaining the frame of the whole, keynote that I want to give, and sort of what I think is going to be a mic drop moment at the end. And interestingly, when we recorded our show, what you were saying about whose permission are you waiting for, that's kind of the mic drop moment. I just say it a different way. So here's the too long didn't read version of it. I'm going to come and I'm going to teach what I call my Do School Different scorecard. It's a scorecard that, let's say, has 8 categories of campus life. Step 1 is thinking about the old way, the current way that you're doing things, right? Step 2 is dreaming about the ideal future. And there's going to be a gap between your current way of operating and the ideal future you dream of, or you haven't dreamt about for a while, but I'm inviting you to dream about. Step 3 is then building a quick action plan. What's the next step you can take to bridge that gap, right? And so there's going to be stories that are aligned to every category. But then as we get to the end, the mic drop moment is we've been talking about evaluating schools, right? We've been talking about the game of school. And some parts of that game are predetermined. You're going to be evaluated on student achievement. Yes, attendance is important. Of course, you're going to be asked about discipline, right? And then each system's going to have a few other things that you're going to be rated as a principal. That's the formal stuff. That's the stuff you cannot change. But outside of that, the part that actually makes the job enjoyable is an invisible game that you may not realize that you're playing. It's a game that you are the author of the rules, right? Meaning that Will can create the rules and the environment in which Will can win and be successful every single time. And then I'm going to ask the crowd, what are the rules of the game that you play?
Mhm.
And if you can't answer what your rules are, you're playing somebody else's game.
That's so good, Danny. So when we think about what we can't control, which is often the rule someone else has created, and then we think
Mm,
about what we can control, which means that we recognize what we are capable of and what we have ownership of, then we can begin to make change. And so for you, a ruckus maker is someone who recognizes, and I mean, you do. I love it that you know you
yeah,
walk to the beat of a different drummer, but so do
100%.
most of but so do most of our students. And if
Yeah.
we think we're going to reach our students based on the perspectives of people who are, let's face it, most teachers, not all, but most teachers are pretty
Mm,
good at the game of school.
hmm.
So, which means that they were able to like navigate the game of school, which makes school really familiar. So, a lot of people go into education because it's the game they know how to play. And then when
Hmm.
they confront kids that don't know how to play this game, they're trying to get them to play the same game they played. Now,
Hmm.
there are some of us that went into education that weren't good at playing the game of school. I wasn't. But I wanted to be able to inspire students to learn in ways that I wish somebody had inspired me. And there were times that lots of times people inspired me in my work as a former student. But I think one of the advantages I had was because I didn't always perform the best at the game of school, I had to learn how to think like a to understand the game so I could teach kids how to think differently about their schooling too. So what you're
Yeah.
asking leaders to do here is yes, we need a safe and orderly environment that's predictable and where people can come in and there's order and organizational and system work that's been done so that we can predict what's going to happen over time. But if you think that students are going to be engaged and want to learn based on the way we've always done it, then you're not seeing school through the eyes of these kids. And
Mm.
so, so let me let you riff on that any more that you want to, Danny.
Yeah, just at the end of the day, I'm not saying that that's the current way of doing school is wrong or bad or anything like that. I'm not saying it's broken. What I'm saying is, how can we make it even better,
Mm-hmm.
right? How can we build upon the foundation that we have? And so that's why when I say Ruckus Makers do school different, I say there's a shift from old, broken, traditional ways of educating to new, different, creative ways. And ruckus makers have a lot of agency and power and autonomy. So what are the shifts you want to make on campus? One of the other tensions I like to pull on is this idea that there's two kinds of leaders, right? There's play it safe principals who maintain the status quo. They have learned and they're really good at being an administrator, and all that content, everything they learned, they can learn it in a binder. Now, ruckus makers, I like to say, are visitors from the future. It should have like a from the future, right? Type of entrance. And they're showing us how education can one day be. There's no manual for that, right? And so we got to create, the reality that we want to see in the world. And that's what it means to be a ruckus maker.
So, with that in mind, I just want to draw attention to something I think is so cool about your work, Danny, and that is that you are a former teacher, educator, administrator, and also business owner, coach, developer, author. And so you've brought, in many ways, those two worlds together
Mm,
in a way that keeps you motivated in the work that you're doing. But I just think that perspective is one of the things that drives the way you teach leaders too. So one of those things that I've heard you mention in other settings, and I'm doing this for my own curiosity too, is is category design. And so
You're
that's
getting a
just
free coaching session.
I
That's what you're
am. I
doing.
am. That's what I'm doing. So I was like, if I get Danny in the room and I put him on the mic, will he talk, tell me more about category design? Because I just know that's one of
I'm
those
just
things,
playing.
that you've been working on in your own work. And I'm just
Yeah,
curious, like,
yeah.
is it transferable for leaders to think about how that kind of concept might work within a school?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't tell school leaders, "Hey, I'm teaching you category design here." I do tell people like you, who I call former educator founders. I do
Mhm.
say I'm teaching you category design here, but it does translate to school leadership. Uh, It's nuanced, right? And there's a lot of parts to it.
Mhm.
Let me paint some very broad strokes. A lot of people love to, a lot of businesses love to lead with the solution, buy my thing, right? And most people in the marketplace don't want to hear just about the thing you have to sell. That lacks empathy, right? And it lacks an understanding of the problem that people are trying to solve, which is why they purchase different things. In the context of school, schools like to lead with how great they are, right? The awards and all the other stuff. It's not, I mean, for people who care about that, it means something. But for the vast majority of people, that's not what to lead with. And so when I'm talking about category design with school leaders, here's a very concrete example. 99.9% of job postings for a school suck. They are the worst. They're boring. They are generic. They sound just like every other school. Probably a combination of HR and lawyers and very low expectations wrote the job description, and it does not move people to action, right? The only people that will apply to that job are people that are desperate, right? Because they need a job. But the top talent aren't applying because of that job description, right? And so how do you, like, something I think about a lot is how do you attract like really world-class talent to your school? Well, you got to be different. So instead of leading with, you know, now hiring sixth grade reading positions and blah blah blah, and we're this school and we're so awesome, lead with your point of view, right? What makes your campus unique? How do you do school different, right? What are the problems you're trying to solve on campus? Tell me about your values, you know? What does it take to be a successful educator on your campus? Show me a job description that does that, right? It does. I don't see it. But when I go into workshops and I teach this, to different types of educators, I'll tell you this, Will, the people that put into practice kind of what we're talking about here. So your point of view, how you do things different, your values, what it takes to be successful, what kind of problems are you solving on campus, and they frame the job like that. They tell me like, oh my gosh, there's people applying so much, I don't know what to do, right? Or I'm getting all these great teachers. And now think about that in the context of an industry, right? Where the teachers supply, the administrative supply is not like it's plentiful, it's scarce. And so it would be very profitable for you to adopt this sort of policy, and point of view. And that's just with job description. So some of the things I just taught there, category design is all about having a unique point of view, right? And
Mhm.
I've already modeled that. You asked me about Ruckus Makers Do School Different. And within that, there was a narrative, right? I named the enemy, play it safe principles. I named the hero, Ruckus Makers, right? So that's something to consider. I
Mhm.
also did what we call in category design a Frodo, but that just means a from to. Because in any situation, whether it's a school or a business, you want to move people from a way of life that is ordinary or maybe negative or hard to a much more ideal, reality and future. So that's another piece of category design.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I've kind of talked about it, but maybe not, so I'll just name it here. But like, you have to fall in love with problems, not solutions, right?
Mhm.
And so because I think when you were on my show, we were talking about good, better, best. By the way, that's category design as well. And we were saying, how do we take good, better, best? And just for the listener, real quick, in a business, it would say like, here's my good, better, best offer, and it adds value, right, into each offer. But we made the bridge. How can you do that on a campus? And we talked about discipline. We talked about job offers, and all this other kind of stuff. And so, in terms of like good, better, best, it's I guess what I'm trying to communicate to the listener is just like, how can you dream up unique and creative solutions, right? Again, that's going to attract talent to campus, and this kind of thing. So, yeah, how's that? Is that all right?
Yes. So I want to pause there just to kind of circle back around and make sure I'm understanding and give listeners a chance to summarize too. So when you think about category design, Danny, you're asking leaders to think about, instead of leading with solutions, leading with what makes what you do unique and different. So instead of
Mm-hmm.
when I'm selling my school or I'm branding or I'm marketing the great things happening here, I mean, your outcomes and your achievements and your awards are important, but that doesn't make you any different than a lot of other schools. What is it
Yeah.
that's unique about your school that's going to do things differently or provide value in a way that no one else does? And don't be afraid to show that, to be that,
Mm.
because I'm going to say that every community, every school, every leader, every teacher has a unique way of delivery. They have a unique
Yeah.
solution. They have their own version of accomplishing goals that's going to be uniquely different from someone else. Am I on the right page?
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I want to add, I talked about falling in love with the problem. Again, imagine two job postings, and one is the one we all know,
Mhm.
and one's the one that I'm kind of describing there. And
Yeah.
again, in the context of like really world-class talent, what do they want out of a school experience? Maybe money, but at some point, like it's kind of comparable through all the districts. So now they're looking for agency, autonomy, and probably solving interesting problems, like being challenged, like pushed and grown. And so if you're a campus and saying like, and you're real, like here's the problems we're trying to solve. We're looking for people who are passionate, right? Solving these problems. Maybe it has to do with chronic absenteeism. Maybe it's about um, some sort of inequitable results in student achievement. I don't know what they are, but my point is like if you list those things, you're going to find people who actually love to solve that problem, but nobody's ever named it. Not one school, right?
Yeah.
Until you do, and then the people that love solving that problem are yours, right?
Mm.
The other thing I wanted to just really quick say, like about the point of view, if somebody, hears me talking and they say, you know what, I'm a ruckus maker, right? Once they sort of make that a part of their identity, because I wear it, right? I live it. This is me. Um, when somebody I'm speaking to here's that point of view, play it safe principle, ruckus maker. What kind of leader do you want to be, right? And if they say, I want to be a ruckus maker, now they want to be working with me, right? If
Right.
they say, oh, I don't want to be a ruckus maker, that's okay. Now I'm not wasting their time, they're not wasting mine. We're not trying to force anything that never would have worked. And so it
Yeah.
helps you get to a positive result for everybody, all parties, all stakeholders, when you're clear about, what you stand for and what you stand against.
I love that. So just as a reminder to leaders, you sell your school all the time.
Yeah.
How you sell your school is going to give someone the opportunity to recognize, is this the right fit for me and
Hmm.
for my child? Or if you're trying to recruit people, is this the right fit? Do my values match the kind of values this place really stands
Yeah.
for?
Yeah.
And if you're going to make yourself distinctly different from someone else, you've got to communicate that. And I'll just give you an example, Danny. Back when I did a lot of hiring, and teacher shortages means that positions are really competitive. We made sure that when we interviewed a client, it wasn't so much
Hmm.
about us interviewing them as about them also interviewing us. And
Right.
so we tried to make sure that we were telling the story of our school, the uniqueness of our community, why being a part of this team is going to be so satisfying if you match with the values and the vision that we have for our students too. I remember I remember one time a math teacher I was in the process of trying to hire, and she'd just been offered by another school, same position, and she followed up with us later and said it was the stories you guys told me that made me
Mm.
want to come here instead, to move here work in this place because I felt like this is the story I want to be a part of. So I love it that
Right.
you took that whole idea of category design and you're just making it so applicable for leaders. Let me switch gears because at the time that this recording's coming out, we're going to be stepping into a new school year, and you've also
Right.
done a lot of
Good luck,
work.
everybody.
Yes, but one of your books, one of your 2023 books was Build Leadership Momentum: How to Create a Perfect Principal Entry Plan. So,
Yeah.
what are some things you would say to a leader as they're stepping into a new school year, Danny, that would be important for them to keep in mind?
Have fun, you know. We already talked about you're playing a game that you are the author of, so realize that. In what the book does is it provides a framework for creating your 90-day entry plan. So big picture, it's got five parts, right? You have well, let me make a distinction. So every framework I teach always starts with the individual leader, right? And that's really important because most school districts, they might say they care about health and wellness, and yeah, I call BS on that, right? Uh, but the thing is, it's called self-care. It's not called district care, right? So it
Mhm.
is your responsibility to take care of yourself as an individual leader. But then in the frameworks I teach on being a successful school leader, you always start with you. So when we're talking, somebody picks up this book, oh, good, perfect principal entry plan. I need that, right? And then they might be surprised, why is Danny talking about me, right? For 1/5 of the book. Well,
Uh-huh.
you're not going to have a great school year if you're not doing great yourself. And
Mhm.
I certainly didn't come up with this phrase, but people say they love when I say it, which is you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is fill your cup first. And what does it take to fill your cup, right? Time with family, maybe your faith, fitness, health, all sorts of things. And that's up to you to decide. So once you have yourself out of the way, then it's the business of school, um, culture, academics, how you communicate, and your operations, right? So that's the five pillars of the framework. And then it's just like, how do you package that in a 90-day experience? And the idea that, I took from the book, The First 90 Days, which I teach in my book as well. Uh, you identify for those five pillars, what does success look like on day one? Well, what about week one? Now month one, month two, month three, right? And that's how you do it, right? Um, in addition to that, and here's the thing. Well, actually, can I ask you a question on your own podcast? Is that okay, Will
Please.
Parker? All right.
Yeah,
What percentage of school leaders do you think have created an entry plan?
that's a great question, Danny.
Yeah,
I'm going to say less than 5%.
less than 5%. Okay. Yeah, and I always say I'm always generous, like 10, but you know what I mean? Like, so let's say 5 to 10% of all school leaders create a legit 90-day entry plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even saying with the five pillars that I talked about, but just kind of a plan. All right. How many then do you think create a second 90-day plan for the second 90 days and then the third 90 days and the fourth?
Oh, God, the number's already gone way down.
Yeah, it's probably like
Uh-huh.
0.01%, right? Like, so, and that's my punchline is that, first you're going to be far and above all your peers and almost guaranteeing the success of your school year by just having a plan, right?
Mhm.
And then if you want to be a part of the top one, it's probably 1% is like too generous. Like if you want to be a part of the top 0.01% of school leaders in the universe, you get to do your 90-day plan 4 times per year. And nobody's doing that. And if
Mhm.
you did, your school campus experience would be legendary. I promise. I'll tell you this, there was a principal down in Arkansas that I was working with, and um, and maybe there's this little like lesson in here too. I I before I wrote the book, I did it as a 5-day challenge. You ever do those for your business, like a 5-day challenge type thing? All right, we need to talk about that at some point. But we did that. It was a free experience. It was just some coaching, and I was teaching how to do the entry plan. And since there's five pillars, each day we knocked out one of those pillars. And I had somebody go through that process. And then they brought it to their team. And they said, Danny, like I showed my team what we created, we made it even better. And then we implemented it. And he said, all the stress of the beginning of the year was gone.
Mm,
Can you imagine that? The
yeah.
stress of the beginning of a school year was non-existent because him and his team and his faculty were on the same page. Here's what we're doing the first 90 days, right?
Mm,
And again, you get to do it a few times. But the bigger thing I was trying to teach there is so it was a 5-day challenge that turned into a book, right? That book turned into a course where we dug into the deeper nuances, and there's some like done for you and done with you type experiences in the course. But the big picture there is like for a school leader, how can you test out little things? Like maybe you try something in a staff meeting and it works kind of well. Well, now what does it look like to make it a little bit bigger and then a little bit bigger after that? So hopefully that's landing, for you and the listener.
yeah. So let me just pause for a second because I was one of those principals not doing entry plans when I first started the work. And,
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'll figure it out as I go. And of course, in year one of being an admin, I was drowning constantly with because the job itself, the fires were what was creating the moments that I was taking the most time to resolve.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Year two probably got a little bit better, but it took me a long time, Danny, to realize, and it was older leaders that began to shape and show me these things that Will sit down with your calendar a year in advance. And I had one leader that would do 3 years planning out and let's
Mhm.
plan it out. All the things that we're going to be doing day to day, week to week, month to month. And so, what I love about the idea of doing this in the terms of the constructs you're describing, which is 90 days at a time, is
Mhm.
you're giving yourself benchmarks. So you're not just looking at the whole semester or the whole year.
Right.
You're really funneling, narrowing it down to these chunks of time so that you have things that are more measurable than just activities and drills and teacher observations and the normal parts of school. You're also saying, man, what are the things you want to have accomplished by then?
Mhm.
And how do you set those markers for those time um, limits for yourself so that you can have something to celebrate along the way too. So it's so practical, Danny. Thank you for that. Anything else you want to add to
Yeah.
that?
Um, 90 days is just a beautiful sort of time period because it's not too long that you punt and procrastinate, and it's not too short you can't get anything done. So that's why it works so well.
So let me ask you this question because I know we're going to wrap up soon, but Um, I discovered you through our friendship as a fellow podcaster, as
Mm.
someone that was leading the way. And as a result, you've inspired me to do a lot of the work I'm doing, Danny, with masterminds and with coaching. You are my coach because I reached out to you when I started the business full time and just said, I've got to put my money where my mouth is, Danny, and I can't be
Yeah.
coaching people if I'm not being coached. So thank you for the last
Thank
two
you.
years of your generous coaching. But I want to speak to that person out there that may be listening to the two of us with that ear for some of the same things that we do, content creation or business development. It's a pretty noisy world. And if someone wanted to get
Mhm.
into the kind of work that you do or support others, or maybe just enhance what they do by doing more work with professional development or presenting or writing their first book, um, what are some things that would be helpful for leaders today, especially relevant in today's world where content creation has just become so noisy?
So basically, if I reflect back to, somebody's been a leader and they're either transitioning to a business full time or they're a leader and just creating content and how do you stand out in a noisy world, right?
There you go. Thanks.
Yeah.
You summarized my question better than I asked it.
No, no. Um, it's being different. I mean, that's what we've been talking about this
Mm-hmm.
whole time. And so you could study category design, but here's the thing: you could certainly look at people that are successful and however you want to define it, and you could kind of emulate maybe and reverse engineer it, like some of the things that work for them. But what I've found, the things that have taken off the most for me in my life, in my business, in my relationships, it's when I'm staying true to who I am, right? And also bringing something unique, to the world. So that's one idea, right? Be different. Two, be generous, right? Um, I've tried to build a reputation in the industry of being somebody who's really generous, right? So like, you know, let's say it's I don't know, just any of the materials, templates, like things that have worked for me that have gotten to whatever level of success, I'll just give them to people, right? And no quid pro quo like type of thing going on. Like just take it. I hope it serves you.
Mhm.
Or connecting people, relationships, like that kind of thing. And so if you're generous, I think people are attracted to that. I don't know. I feel a lot better when I'm generous versus like feeling, needy or desperate or something like that. So that's important. And three would be don't give up, right? A lot of people give up before they're successful. Like the day before the stuff was about to go and be awesome.
Mhm.
Um, and don't trust anybody, teaching you that they're going to get you a million likes or impressions and comments or dollars like overnight. Like that's all a bunch of baloney, but people fall for that all the time. And get yourself a coach, right? So I think we kind of covered 5 points there. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Be different, be generous, be persistent. Don't believe that you can buy quick results,
Yeah.
and find a coach. And man, Danny, you've practiced all of those things so um, consistently over time. And I'll just echo some of those same sentiments because, um, you know, I heard years ago, I was listening to a podcast for entrepreneurs because when I decided to
Mm-hmm.
start doing content creation, I didn't understand that world. So I was like, well, other people
Mm-hmm.
are doing this. So I was listening to an interview, I think on the show by John Dumas called Entrepreneurs on Fire. And
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
he was interviewing a guy who had started a really successful online business. And he said in that interview, people will ask me, how did you get your business to become so successful this
Mm-hmm.
year? Because they thought, they just discovered them and they're just curious, how did you get successful so fast? And he said, oh, thanks for asking that question. And the answer is, it took me 10 years because I've been
Right.
running this business for 10 years and
Yep, exactly.
you just now discovered me. And so
Yeah.
I think the version that people are sometimes when they're doing really great work is not the version that they were 10 years ago.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
but the version that they've become usually happens based on those principles that you just said.
That's
And
so
so
good.
that's just such a healthy way to look at things. So, as we wrap up, I want leaders to know how they can connect with you and any parting words of advice you have, especially as leaders are stepping into a new school year.
Yeah, thanks. Well, in terms of connecting, I'd have leaders hop over to ruckusmakers.news. That's the newsletter. It's free to subscribe. And check that out, right? Because each week, 3 times a week, we'll give you a new way to do school different. And you can get as many or as little of those 3 times a week if you do the content preference survey. So that's a great way to stay connected. Parting words of advice, over my left shoulder here, it might look right on the video, I don't know, but it says when you get better, everybody wins. And so I just want to challenge people to invest in themselves, right? There's a lot of great opportunities to grow your leadership. And you really should do some kind of leadership audit. Like, how are you pushing yourself? If it's just books, kudos to you because you're reading, but are you in a course? Do you have a coach, a mastermind? Will offers that stuff. I do too. Uh, but you could certainly go a lot farther, right? And have a much bigger impact if you have support. And so if you're leading alone, don't. When you get better, everybody wins.
I so agree. Well, Danny Bauer, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being
Yeah.
such an amazing ruckus maker. And Principal Matters listeners, as you think about the road that you're on this week and the work that you're doing, don't give yourself the grace to recognize that we always have places to grow. And but hold on to those truths that the unique way that you lead makes you different, but it makes you valuable. Be authentic, be be generous, be resilient, persistent, and at the end of the day, give yourself permission to be, what you call it, Danny? Do you want to be a play it safe leader, or do you want to be a
play it safe principal or a ruckus maker?
All right, so let's be ruckus makers. Until next time, thank you for doing what matters. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Will.